Greetings, I'm the One Called Horror Show, and welcome to VG Therapy, the channel where I talk about games. Now, here we are at the end of this retrospective, no longer a retrospective, just a spective. Or review if you want to use actual words. But either way, I'm super excited to play Devil May Cry 5. A game that, while I haven't been agonizing over the wait as long as some other people, I have been eagerly awaiting this game. And I've been keeping up to date with all the things that came out of it, all the news, all the gameplay things that were shown, and I'm just super excited to play this game, and it will be the most modern game I've ever covered on this channel. While I will cover some modern games on the channel, but nothing that has ever come out in the same month as my review of it. But enough with the preamble, let's dive right in.
Devil May Cry 5 was announced at E3 2018 at the Microsoft press conference for some reason, and initially people were concerned, as was I, because as we watched the trailer expectations were low. Then we saw Capcom come across the screen and everyone held their breath. And then we saw the title of Devil May Cry and we had a moment of joy before we saw Nero with a haircut similar to Reboot Dante. So it took everyone a second to figure out what this was actually a trailer for. But by the end of it we knew what it was and we were excited. And after the trailer was shown, Hideaki Itsuno came out and said two things. First is that he is back to direct a new DMC game, and also that fans have been waiting for 10 years for a new Devil May Cry game, which means that they weren't counting the reboot, of which the team who made that just got bought by Microsoft, so they were probably in the audience.
And people combed over this trailer trying to look for all the little secrets and details because they wanted it done right. And it seemed like Capcom was on the right track. I mean, hell, originally Itsuno wanted to make a sequel to the reboot, and the higher-ups told him no. Although it has been said that he apparently told the higher-ups that he was going to leave Capcom if he didn't get to make a sequel to the classic series, so I'm not too sure which is the actual one. But either way, it seems that Capcom really wanted things done well and wanted to please fans. And in the entire news cycle of this game, only two problems ever came up.
The first was the announcement of microtransactions, to which got heavily criticized by many, but as a lot of people were quick to point out, Devil May Cry 4 Special Edition introduced microtransactions while at the same time making it easier to get everything, so quite a few people were not that concerned. I mean, based on what was shown off, people worked out that the amount of red orbs you get, this game's currency, suggests that there will be no concern about how hard it is to get them. Then on top of that, they showed off a weapon that could get you bonus red orbs, so there shouldn't be that much concern over microtransactions in this game.
Although the concerns over microtransactions are still valid as they really shouldn't be in a full-priced game, this seems to be the type of game where it was built around you not having them rather than forcing you to pay up. So you don't need to worry about grinding for hours because the game wants you to give it a little bit more money.
And the second point that brought attention was Dante's Theme. The song was called Subhuman and performed by Suicide Silence, and everyone hated it. Some people attributed it to the vocals, but even so, it was poorly received.
I remember when I first saw it, about 3/4 of the reactions were dislikes, and I don't know how it ended up because the video got taken down.
And also the official website that had the description of the song described Dante wrong. They described him as a foul-mouthed protagonist and anti-hero, which describes Reboot Dante more.
All of this leads me to believe that the band didn't know what they were doing and looked at Reboot Dante as their inspiration, as this song would be a better fit for him. But once the song got pulled down, the song description also got changed.
However, the main issue people had was the fact that the lead singer has credible sexual misconduct allegations against him involving a 17-year-old fan. And Capcom put out a statement stating that the allegations came out after the song had been recorded, so they weren't aware of this. And so they would remove all traces of the song from the promotional materials and would see if they could take it out of the game in time. And the end result of this was the lead singer getting replaced, as he seemed to be the cause of almost everyone's backlash.
My favourite bit about this is that it was all wrapped up by the next day. So from the video going live to the statement, that took a single day. The bit about the replacement happened later, but the thing is, they got on this so quickly that seems to suggest that Capcom really wanted to make sure that fans were happy, and that fans were excited for the game they were putting out. But the thing is, the main thing that fans were excited for was a good DMC game. And so to see if they did that, let's go through the story first. And the thing about the story is that there are some things in here that I don't want to spoil, because I feel that they would be better experienced by yourself, and either you know them, so there's no real point in me talking about them, or you don't know them, and I don't want to be the one who spoils them for you, so I'm just not going to really touch on those things. However, there will be gameplay spoilers, and I will be showing footage from me late in the game, or even once I'd beaten the game, so there is going to be that.
The game starts off with a one-armed Nero journeying through a weird hellish environment alongside a man with a cane. They say that they're going to help Dante, who is fighting a powerful demon named Urizen. They both lose, and Nero and this goth dude leave while Dante holds Urizen back. And over the course of the game, we learn about the caned goth man whose name is V, and we learn more about Urizen, all the while Nero journeys back to the Clypoth, which is a big demonic tree growing in the middle of Redgrave City. And inside of it was where Urizen and Dante were fighting. And that's the premise. A powerful demon is coming back, and it is suggested to be one known by Dante. And after failing initially, everyone regroups a month later and tries again. And along the way, you save Dante and pals who got rocked super hard during the month away. Which brings up a point that I felt could have been done better. When you rescue Lady and Trish, they go and start hanging out with Nico, Nero's mechanic friend who acts as the shop and is also a goddamn cartoon character. But they don't really do much for the story and aren't involved that much. And I like these two, so I wish that there was more that they did. Like in one of Dante's missions, they run around and watch you fight before leaving, but that's about it. I can understand why they weren't given much spotlight, as this game is meant to serve as the end of the Sons of Sparta saga, so they wanted to focus on finishing everything to do with Dante's story, and to also pass the torch to Nero, which I felt was done really well, but it just meant that I was wanting more from the characters who were pushed to the sidelines. Like Nico got to still have a large presence despite not having that much to do with the story, because she's the shop and it's also in charge of giving Nero new gear, so she keeps appearing around the end of the level with style, and is there for the end of a lot of missions, and at the start of the mission they're usually hanging out in a van before heading out. So she gets a lot of screen time, and it's great because she's great, but I just wish that Lady and Trish got something of that level. But even with that, I felt that the story and characters were great and still kept the charm of the classic games while putting more focus on the story.
They don't go as hard in on the story as, say, God of War does, but I feel it's still a step up. And the thing is, I only mentioned God of War because back in the day they used to be compared to one another a lot, and so I felt that it was a good place to compare them here. Because God of War was always known for its story and its spectacle. But the thing Devil May Cry was known for, and the thing that fans were excited for, was the gameplay. And people were a little bit concerned about that because, as I said, Itsuno wanted to make a sequel to the reboot. So does that mean that the gameplay is going to be more like the reboot, or like the classic series?
Well, it doesn't take you long to find out that it's like the classic series. Nero feels familiar and he has all of his sword tricks from 4, from his 3-pause combos to his ability to rev up his sword to improve his attacks.
Which all feel amazing, and I would say improved upon, but I'll need to play around with them a bit more before I can say that as a definitive statement. And the thing is, here's a few new goodies to play around with as well, some of which took me a while to figure out how to best utilize, but I eventually got there.
The main thing that changed was the fact that Nero no longer has his demon arm, so he can't do his cool buster moves. However, that won't be a problem as he now has what are called Devil Breakers, arms that have 1 or 2 unique abilities each that replaces his old arm. There are 8 of them, 12 if you include the DLC, and each one has its purpose. You have Overture, an arm that shoots out an electric palm that can counter certain moves. And if you charge it up, then you put it on an enemy and it explodes once you shoot it or if enough time passes. And this arm is the one that I found myself using the most, as it is good for dealing damage and giving you style. Gerbera can make you bounce around and once charged up shoots out a massive beam, or if you're in the air there are multiple small lasers that bounce around. This one I mainly used as an air-based trickster, and also the massive beam I didn't use as much because enemies would move and the aerial super was just a lot faster and would usually hit more enemies. Punchline is a rocket punch that you can also skate on and allows you to do a powerful uppercut or downward slam. I had a hard time figuring out how to best utilize the rocket skateboard, but I still got a lot of use out of just having continuous damage done to the enemies I was fighting. Buster arm is Nero's old arm and I love it for that. React time creates small bubbles of frozen time, or if charged then it freezes the entire area for an extended period of time. And this is cool because it turns every enemy into a punching bag for you to style on. Tomboy makes your sword and gun stupidly strong and hard to control, and I still haven't gotten the hang of it, but I know that I need to fix that. Helter Skelter is a drill that can be charged into a Psycho Crusher, and I did use this a lot even before I found out that if you mash B or circle you get an extended drill attack. Rawhide is a whip that has a few combos and is my favorite because it's basically just a second weapon tied to a different button. And the DLC ones are Mega Buster, which shoots out pellets and one super shot along with changing some animations, which honestly is the best part of it. It has a weapon I don't care for, but seeing Nero jump and slide around like Mega Man was great. Sweet Surrender, which is a an arm that restores a small amount of health and feels kinda pointless as it will only recharge red health, so you need to hit it quickly after getting hit. So its main use is to use its super move to give you back more health. The Pasta Breaker, which can swap Devil Breakers around, which I didn't find a need for, but someone might. And then finally we have Gerbera GP01, which is a slightly modified Gerbera, but I feel it looks a bit cooler and doesn't feel all too necessary. And all of these are unlocked throughout the game, and the unique feature of them is that while the charged moves are super strong, it also breaks them.
Yeah, these are consumable items that can be bought in the store or found in the levels themselves.
You can break one off for a small amount of damage, alternatively you can get hit while using one or do a super powered move to break it. And you would do this because you otherwise can't swap between them. So if you want to use the next one, then you need to break the one you're using. I got very used to using and breaking them in the demo, but in the full game I didn't do it as much because I wouldn't know what's coming up next, so I wouldn't know what I'd need. So as someone who can never use a consumable item, I would hold onto them and not really pop them. Although when I go back through and gain familiarity with the levels, similar to the point of the demo, then I will be less conservative.
And these are a welcome addition to Nero, because in 4 I felt that he kind of didn't have as much to play around with, and he never got anything that would drastically change how he would play. But here he finally got that. And speaking of drastically changing how you play and welcome additions, next up we have V.
V is a weirdo to control, and it took me a while to get used to him. He is a summoner. He can summon a Black Panther called Shadow and a bird called Griffin, both of which are from Devil May Cry 1, and they do all the fighting for him while he stands back. His controls are the same as the other characters, but he still felt odd, as you can be doing a combo with Shadow but be miles away doing something else, and the same for Griffin. I eventually got the hang of him, and he is a lot of fun, because what you really need to do, or what I do, is focus solely on Shadow and basically play normally with a super zoomed out camera. The only problems I had with learning him was the fact that since Shadow and Griffin are physical beings that you can't control directly, getting Shadow and to a lesser extent Griffin to the enemy that I wanted was sometimes not that easy. But as I said, he's a lot of fun, even more so when you add in some of the cool tricks he has, such as summoning Nightmare, who is also from DMC1. Nightmare is a juggernaut that decimates the environment around him at the cost of your Devil Trigger gauge. And one of the cool things about how V uses his Devil Trigger is that Nightmare acts as him activating his Devil Trigger, which gives V white hair, but you can alternatively feed Shadow and Griffin Devil Trigger, which powers them up and allows them to act on their own if you want. And this is highly encouraged, as V can manually charge his DT gauge by reading poetry by William Blake. And this can lead to scenes of absolute destruction that goes on in the background of V having a jolly old time.
Although going back a bit, I have to wonder, why is it that they have him read poetry exclusively by William Blake instead of, say, multiple authors? I mean, what was it that he did specifically? Let me just look it up. Oh, he had a character called Urizen. So that's probably where they got that. Okay, that's pretty cool. What else did he do? Let's see. Oh, he also did paintings based on the Divine Comedy, and they are considered some of his greatest works. Speaking of Dante,
Dante is back and doing much better than last time, as he now has levels of his own and enemies designed to work better with his kit, which includes Rebellion, Ebony and Ivory, Coyote A, and his newest take on his quote-unquote unarmed weapon, Balrog. In the prequel novel, they go into how he got Balrog, but for the game they knew that people would be expecting it, so they didn't even try to front and just gave it to you at the start. And you get a few new weapons, including Cavalier, a hefty dual chainsaw motorbike, King Cerberus, a triple iced nunchuck like the one in 3, but this one can be turned into a fire-based bow staff and a lightning-based 3-section staff. The Devil Sword, which can be used in the stead of Rebellion or Sparta, which you also get, although personally I didn't like it as much as its Swordmaster attacks don't have Dante doing an animation, they just come out, so I just stuck with Rebellion, because while the Devil Sword has all these Swordmaster attacks but just has normal attacks, I was having trouble wrapping my head around attacks that are done while you do something else. But we do have a few more weapons in the form of various guns. We have the Kalina Ann, Kalina Ann 2, and the double Kalina Ann. Kalina Ann and Kalina Ann 2, as far as I can tell, are the exact same weapons, but one is optional, and they both act like the Kalina Ann from DMC 3, but a little bit better. And the double Kalina Ann is you dual wielding the Kalina Anns and having them act somewhat differently, as you can combine the Kalina Anns for different attacks. And lastly we have Dr. Faust, a hat and scarf that uses your red orbs as ammo, and if used well can net you a ton of red orbs. Which brings up the fact that the game has microtransactions that allow you to buy red orbs, and I wrote down as a note to talk about the fact that when you swap characters, you don't get the red orbs you spent on the previous character, so you need to earn more, and I felt that that was just going to make it take longer for me to unlock everything, but then I found out about the room at the end of mission 13 that allows you to earn a ridiculous amount of red orbs. As after a few hours I had nearly 10 million red orbs, as I wanted to buy the taunts that cost 3 million each for all 3 characters, and then I figured I might as well get everything else while I'm at it. And this is pretty early on, and while you will need the upgrades for Dr. Faust that increases how many red orbs you get, it's still possible and you will be getting a lot, which means that you can quickly get those upgrades.
So yeah, Dr. Faust kind of breaks things. However, it's more of a risk-reward system, as if you get hit you can lose red orbs, and a lot of your attacks use red orbs as their ammunition. So, yeah, you can stand to lose a lot, but you can stand to gain a lot. But at the end of the day, if you're good at the game, you can get a ridiculous amount of red orbs.
As I mentioned before, Dante now has levels all to himself, which leads me to the point that this game is so much better than 4. Not only because of its gameplay, but because it has a second half of the game. The game has 20 missions, 21 if you count the prologue, and 24 if you count the branching paths. The branching paths are levels where you can choose to play as one character or the other, and I kinda figured that they'd all be the same, and they sort of are, with the first one being the most different. And the levels are split almost evenly between the characters, as if you include the branching paths, the level split is Nero at 10, V at 6, and Dante at 8. And these are fun levels to go through, and there's none of the backtracking that 3 and 4 had. I had a lot of fun with these levels, exploring them was great, and I would feel proud whenever I found a secret. Be it blue orb fragment, purple orb fragment, gold orbs, of which there are a lot more than most people would need, but that's fine. Or even a secret mission, which this time around are a lot harder to find, as they are now giant sigils painted on the world that only forms if you look at it from the right angle, so I would end up finding one and then running around trying to find where I was supposed to be standing to activate it. And sometimes I'd find it, and sometimes I wouldn't find it. But I did eventually get everything, including Dante's final upgrade, which is only unlocked after beating hard mode. And the ability is something I couldn't understand what it was until I saw it, because I didn't consider that they would do this. Because while playing as Dante, you can choose what weapons you want to have equipped, all or some, and even the order of them, with your main sword and ebony and ivory being the only ones you have to have equipped. It can be any of the 3 variants of the sword, but there has to be one, and you can't have more than one. And the same goes for Cavalier if you have the DLC, and also the Kalina Ants. You can choose to have it or not, but you can't use all the models at the same time. Dante's final upgrade is to give you the ability to have them all equipped at the same time, so you can have 3 swords, 2 Cavaliers, and then Balrog and King Cerberus. And you can equip on your gun side Ebony and Ivory, Coyote A, Kalina Ann 2, Double Kalina Ann, and Dr. Faust. That is so over the top that I love it. I was having trouble making sure that I used all the things I had before unlocking the ability to have all variations. So being able to use them all made me excited to see what I could do and to see what people can do in combo videos, which are now so much easier to make because they added a much needed feature of a training room that you can just test things out on, with you being able to customize what enemies you want, what you want them to do, and what do you want to have on you. From infinite double trigger that automatically recharges, or just regular double trigger. And there are more options to it, and it's just a perfect place for learning the game, as before you'd need to go into a certain level or the bloody palace and get to a part that can kinda work for you. Now it's all here. And really, the only other thing I could say as a negative about the game ties to this mode, as it's not something that they do wrong, but something that would have been nice, and that is a timing tutorial or a training mode, as I was finding that the timing needed for Dr. Faust and max acting wasn't something that I could reliably do, as I wasn't too sure what the window of time I was meant to be aiming for was. So something that could help with that would be nice.
And the thing is, if the only complaints I have about the game is that I want it to be easier for me to learn how to do things more reliably, and that I wish that some of the cast had more involvement in the story, that kind of tells you how much I love this game. How I just want this game to be more, because what is there is already amazing. Because I've been having a hard time putting this game down. And after this review is done, I'm probably going to go back and play it. And come April, I'm going to be playing the absolute hell out of it, because Bloody Palace will come out, and I might actually have a hard time putting out reviews after then, because I just love this game. And while, yeah, going forward, my favorite Devil Hunter might not necessarily be in the series anymore, I still absolutely adore this game, and this series as a whole. A series that I'm not sure if I made it clear or not, I didn't actually care that much for until these reviews. As I said, I never actually put that much time or investment into these series. I respected the games, I liked what they did for other games of the genre, and I really did like Dante, which is why I've got a replica Rebellion, his sword, on my wall, and also why I played a character based on him in a D&D campaign for over 2 years, because I really liked him, but I never actually cared for the games. But doing these reviews and playing these games again has just made me fall in love with this series. This series has quickly shot up to being one of my favorite series of all time. And when it comes to the actual review of this game that wraps up 18 years worth of story, has all these nods and references to older games, while I feel not making it so overt and alienating to newcomers, and just fixes and improves upon everything this series has done, I of course have to give this game a 4 out of 4. I just absolutely adore this game and this series, and I can't wait for what the future holds. And from here on out, I'll finally be done with the Devil May Cry games. I won't have another review to do, so I can go back to doing whatever the hell it was that I was doing before these games. And with that, I've been Horror Show, and this was VG Therapy.